We're talking about communication right now. My name is Mike Knudstrup. I have an MBA and PhD from Florida State University. And I've been teaching management and leadership topics for about 15 years now. So we'll discuss the communication process, information richness, the idea that some mediums are more information rich than others, nonverbal communication, active listening, and communication between levels, upward, downward, lateral, diagonal, and the grapevine in communication. So the basic communication process here starts with the sender who has a message they want to transmit. They encode that message right into some sort of symbols, form, and they send it through a medium. What are the mediums people can use? Okay? Well, telephone, for example, is a medium where you transmit the message. Email is a medium as well as is texting on a telephone. All right. So then it gets to the receiver and it's decoded. And then the last step in the process is feedback. Feedback to the sender on whether or not the message has been received as intended. Through this process, through this transmission process of going through a medium, something called noise can occur that obscures the message or makes the transmission less than fully accurate. Sources of noise could be static on a telephone line, could be the other person's state of mind when they're reading your text, for example. But noise occurs and diffuses the transmission of the message through the medium. All right. So some mediums are richer in the amount of information that they send than others. Information richness is the idea that some mediums, remember a medium could be, well, these are all mediums, face-to-face communication, telephone, email, presentations, memos, traditional snail mail, bulletin boards. Some mediums vary on the amount of information they send. Like face-to-face is very high in how much information it sends, nonverbal and the verbal. All right, it's also very high in the speed. It's right there. Face-to-face, we're right with each other. And the individuality can be very specific when we're face-to-face. So mediums vary on their richness. We want to match mediums to the message. So which one of these over here would be very low in richness? I would say bulletin boards would be very low, for example, because not a whole lot amount of information can be sent. The speed can be pretty slow, Someone might never even see a bulletin board. Plus, bulletin boards are not very individualized. Okay, so we match the medium to the message because rich mediums tend to cost more money. I mean, a face-to-face communication takes a lot of time and energy, versus putting a bulletin, something up on a bulletin board. You can copy it off and put it on bulletin boards all over campus or your workplace, for example. So, being that face-to-face communication is very costly, we want to pick and choose our places. Very important messages and situations maybe require face-to-face. If you're doing a performance appraisal, you're probably going to do it face-to-face, for example. If you're disciplining somebody, probably more face-to-face. You're giving somebody a promotion. Maybe you want to talk to them face-to-face. Important stuff is face-to-face because it's costly. If it's a minor issue, let's say the deductible on your health insurance is going up $5 per office visit. Well, you don't have to go around and talk to each individual person about this change in this deductible. You just maybe will send it on an email or put it on a bulletin board or something like that. Because it's not that major, it's not that important, it doesn't really merit a high information-rich medium. Part of what makes mediums rich, like face-to-face, is the amount of nonverbal communication that occurs. Okay, When we call nonverbal communication, some people also call it body language, and it's everything that's transmitted except the words themselves. Experts say that 80 to 90% of what is communicated is nonverbal communication. Some examples of nonverbal communication. Oh, what might they be? Say, for example, hand gestures. Our nonverbal communication. Communicate with hand gestures. Communicate with your tone of your voice. Am I angry? Am I happy? Whatever. Your tone of your voice communicates. There's so many different ways people communicate. How they hold themselves, the clothes they wear, the speed with which they speak. Do they look you in the eye? How do they groom themselves? So much is communicated non-verbally. So you probably agree with me that we need to be aware of how we communicate non-verbally. We also need to be pretty good, I think, or at least try to be good at picking up on non-verbal signals. Okay? When what is communicated verbally differs from the non-verbal, people tend to put more stock or faith in the nonverbal communication because, as I noted, somewhere around 80% or so of what's communicated is nonverbal. Overcoming barriers to effective interpersonal communication. One method of doing so is active listening. All right, active listening, well, of course, we don't want to have inactive listening, but active listening comes through, in various forms. But oftentimes, people are trained in active listening. How do people often listen normally? Well, sometimes all they're doing is waiting for a break in the action so they can get their point across. So they're not really listening actively. Or, maybe remember we talked about noise earlier? Maybe there's noise going on in their head. I agree with this. I don't agree with that. This person doesn't know what they're talking about. We're not really giving them a chance. Active listening is giving that person a chance to state their side. And oftentimes, like in customer service situations or whatever, active listening is the idea of letting them speak, and then we paraphrase back to them what they just said. So, you're talking to a customer. So what I hear is you're very disappointed that my service person didn't quite get the job done well. I mean, they did well in this part of the work, but this part did not work out. I'm hearing that you're very disappointed about that. And then they say yes, and hopefully they calm down, because a lot of times people just want to be heard. Once they know they're heard, then they will let you speak. That's the idea of active listening. Active listening isn't the idea that you're going to be a doormat or you allow people to be abusive. No, it's that we give them a chance to speak, we paraphrase back. Once they say yes, then they say, well, this part. Please consider that it was a Friday and you put a rush order in. We did the best you can. I'm sorry we didn't live up to your expectations, but we will make up for it and we'll finish the job to your specifications. So, you're not a doormat. You don't allow people to be abusive or speak wrongly to you, but you let them speak, paraphrase back. Once they say yes, they feel heard. Oftentimes they'll calm down a lot, and then they'll let you speak your part as well. It tends to open people up. All right, that's active listening. Listening in terms of communication in terms of the hierarchy. Downward communication is coming down from upward management. Upward communication from the lower levels up. Diagonals between levels and between departments. And then lateral is the same level, but between different departments in the structure. So when you look at like lateral and diagonal, what can you assume the issues might be? Well, the main issue I can see is you violate the chain of command. Normal communication requires you to follow things up and then go to the other side. So you might get in trouble, but people often talk, or maybe they have friends, a grapevine or whatever, they just go right to this person in this other department. As long as you have your supervisor's blessing, it might be okay. It gets things done faster. But It generally doesn't follow the chain of command. Downward communication often communicates policies, procedures, goals, or evaluations. And then upward communication tends to be about progress and problems and that kind of thing. Remember just a second ago I talked about lateral or diagonal communication between departments, maybe some of it being the grapevine. What is the grapevine? All right. It's the informal communication network that is active in almost every organization. Can you ever stop the grapevine? Seriously. Can you ever stop it? Probably not, because people are people. And people talk. Communication is social needs being very important. So I don't think a manager can ever really stop the grapevine. In fact, I don't think they even notice it as the grapevine unless negative stuff is going around. If people are just talking and enjoying themselves, is just that. But managers notice the grapevine when it gets negative about the organization. And because of our social nature, people are social animals, probably can't ever stop the grapevine. But the grapevine can be useful, I think, for managers, and at least it's like the thermometer. It's the pulse. The thermometer on the organization. I don't know if you get the thermometer, right? Little thermometer here. What's the temperature of things? If the temperature is really hot, people are really concerned, all of a sudden they start talking. So the grapevine is a little bit of a barometer or a thermometer on how things are. It kind of lets you know how insecure or concerned people are feeling. And so managers can get on that. I think the thing managers need to be careful about is that rumors go around in the grapevine. It changes as it goes through the network, and so people feel obliged to respond to the rumors and deny it. No, this is not happening. The problem with that, stating the rumor directly or denying the rumor, is that it intends to inform people who would not have known about it already. Oh, I didn't know about that. Gee, maybe I should be concerned. Or if you deny it too hard, then people tend to think, well, you must actually did it because you're denying it so hard. But in general, what people say is, if there's a rumor floating around, address it quickly, but do not address the rumor. Just address what is actually happening. So, people are afraid 20% of the workforce is going to lose their jobs. You don't come out and say, no, well, the rumor is not true. 20% of the workforce is not losing their position. What you'll say is, we have plans for holding steady on our employment. We might actually increase employment by 1% or something like that. You don't repeat the rumor. You just inform people and reinforce it if you do. All right. So we talked about the communication process. We've talked about information, richness, the idea that some mediums you transmit are richer in information than others. Talked about nonverbal communication, active listening, communication in the hierarchy, and then also the grapevine and communication. And that's it for this segment, Principles of Management Communication.